Hello, it's me, Annalisa, with my spiritual friend, and I'm back. It is Sunday, the 14th of August. I hope everybody is well. I'm sorry I'm late. I'm working on stuff, and I got stuck for a long time. You guys ever get stuck in your head and you're like, ugh. So I just got stuck in my head, and so I'm trying to I keep seeing when you get recurring information from the universe and you're like, all right, I got the message, and mine is sort of like, um, get your ass in gear and start working as if this is already where it's at. So, and then I hyper focus and I lose track of time and probably neurodivergence. So that's me. Cindy, you are first on the list, and then I've got Devry and Linda. As always, I'm not a doctor, a lawyer, a therapist, or a financial advisor. If you need one of those, please seek those. I am a spiritualist reverend. This is a part of our spiritual practice to do readings to pass along messages from our guides and loved ones. Typically in churches, we do platform readings where we just stand in front of our congregation, and we're called. So they say, I've never felt like, how when John Edwards and they do the room gallery readings and they're like, I have somebody over here. I literally will specifically be like, I ask where I pick a reading. So I'll kind of be directed in an area, and then I sort of get the feeling for that person. And then I say, what do they need to know? So I don't go, I feel somebody over in that area. I literally go, hey, you back there in that shirt, this message is for you. I guess mainly because I am a gigantic skeptic, so I like giving evidence, and hopefully I've proven myself over the years. So we see all this stuff with, I'm just rambling right now. Oh, I did do that for you, Cindy. So I always thought we were supposed to, I don't know. I get caught up in rules a lot and following the rules. It's probably what saved me growing up, that I'm very much a rule follower. I'm in my head, I'm like, but I need to do, it's like, I really do think I'm neurodivergent. And I think there's a lot of things that saved me. Why it saved me. Like when you grow up, I grew up like a major latchkey kid, should have been taken away from neglect. My mom worked. This was in, the 80s. I was born in 78. And my mom worked all the time because my parents divorced when I was 6. So I was doing my laundry at a very, very early age, cooking my own meals, getting myself ready for school, all of that stuff. But our teachers said things like, you have to be in bed by 8:30. So I was in bed by 8:30 every night. You have to go to school every day unless you're sick. And if you're sick, you can't go out and play. So I literally had this very rigid system because this is what teachers told me I was supposed to be doing. Very much a rule follower. I would go out when I was at my mom's house, I would go out and I would do things kids aren't supposed to do with my friends, because my mom trusted me to not do anything too stupid. But I didn't do that under my dad's roof because there was different rules there. And I was, again, very rigid. Okay. So that's me. And I don't know why I'm rambling about that, but because I thought there was rules about how to do this. And so I figured out my own way. Anyway, okay. So I saw this first question, and I didn't look at the second question earlier when it came in. I'm not going to say should, because I never tell you should, but it does feel like it would behoove you to have someone look at his records. And because I do feel like you have a case. I don't know if it's malpractice, negligence, something along those lines. I don't know if it's malpractice or negligence, or if those are two in the same, even though I was in medicine. I just don't know legally how that works. But it feels like someone should look at the records, and it feels like you'll have to find somebody that's not somebody that's maybe from the West Coast or the Midwest, somebody that's not on the East Coast. And right. So what I feel like happens is you'll get aid towards his medical coverage and the things that he's going to need as a result of all of this. Hi, Devry. But again, I feel like you have to go like outside of this area to find somebody who specializes in this stuff, like reading the records, knowing what they're looking for, because he's going to have a stack like this when you have a final copy of it. Like if they were to actually print it up, he's going to have a very thick set of records. But yeah, it does feel like it would behoove you. And it doesn't like, so it's interesting. I don't feel like it's suing because this is why I think lawsuits are so much more prevalent in the United States because than like in other countries. The reason why they're not as prevalent in other countries, it doesn't mean malpractice doesn't happen there, but they take care of their people. You're not left with sometimes millions of dollars worth of medical bills. It's just different. I'm not saying that it's perfect. It's not. Nowhere is perfect, but he would have more coverage other places. And that's why I feel like you need to do this. Not because you got to teach somebody a lesson and they need to learn, because I know a doctor who I think was sued at one point because every time she came through when I was in the NICU, like every time it was her month to rotate, fuck man, it would take her all day to do rounds, like literally all day. And she would order every test under the sun. So you knew that you were just going to be very busy that month, like forever. But I feel like it's more about getting the compensation and the things that he needs and that you guys need. You need to have appropriately trained people to come in and help out with his needs. And that's not just, you can't just hire anybody to do that. Hi, Shar. So I hope everybody is well. Hi, Mallory. It's good to see you. Meaning you feel like he's provocative, meaning he's like intentionally trying to start shit. Don't we hate that? I just want to go to, I don't know why I'm looking at that one. I want to go and look and see what your second question is. Here we go. Okay. So ask me what question you want me to, yeah. So what I see is, I always feel like, I don't know if this is really psychic or not, but it's just what's coming to me. So it's that feeling of like, some of the stuff that's happening is you're being triggered by, and you know this. So when I say this, I already know you know this information. But sometimes we need to hear it again, and we need to hear it out loud from somebody else than rather just rolling around in our heads. Our triggers come from very, very young places. So I'll tell you what's going on with him, and then, but we always have to start with ourselves, right? In a way, I think that's like the most, like, if we can start with ourselves first, and then, so it just feels like if you would go to the core of like, not with him, but like, okay, why does this bother me? Just ask why. Go down the why little rabbit hole and ask why. Like, why is this really triggering me? What do I feel in this moment? Why am I feeling that way? Where does this originally come from? So like, I'm giving my kids as an example, like some of the stuff they do, I'm like, why does this bother me? Like, why is this really triggering me? And a lot of it comes down to feeling not seen, not heard, not validated, because I wasn't seen, heard, validated as a kid, right? Right. That's just flat out disrespectful. And we'll talk about that. So go to that, and then also, like, why does it bother you that he calls you by his parents' name? So I want you to go down that one because I feel like the way you have to communicate with him is extremely direct, where it's like, I don't like when you do that because it makes me feel like this. If you feel like I'm being a certain way rather than being passive aggressive or aggressive aggressive, tell me where you're at with it. Tell me where you're at with that. That feels like a low blow. Like it's literally has to be like, that's a low blow. I don't like that. I know you feel like you're joking, but this is how I receive it. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay for somebody to get their feelings hurt or feel uncomfortable when you set boundaries. That's a consequence of having a boundary set. Right. So, but just saying, don't call me that feels like you're being shamed or like put in your place. So instead of that, yeah. So instead of that, you would say, and I know you know this. I know you know this. And I'm saying because I felt shamed when I went out to do that thing, I felt like I got the finger wag at me. They tell you to be yourself, and then yourself, and when you're I really do think I'm autistic, y'all. I just like there's just so many things. There's just so many things. And I tend to be like, I no, like I really don't have much of a filter. Like I have random weird thoughts. And I mean I can't and like it's heavy masking and it's like, okay, don't say anything, don't say anything, don't say anything, don't say anything. Like I made a comment. We were holding these talking sticks up to I wanted a picture. There was no sound, like in the picture. But I said something along like, I don't know why, but holding it up, I thought like I don't know why, but I thought the power of Christ compels you. Like it was just a weird moment for me. Um, I have a lot of weird triggers when it comes to spiritual stuff because of my own figuring out what I believed and the whole Christians, Baptisty, evangelically type path that I went down trying to figure out what I believed and all of the strange rules. So, but I definitely got like lots of looks from the person who facilitated this. She didn't appreciate my joke. um, and I felt shamed and I felt very small and very little and very young at the moment. And I'm not saying her intention was that or that she's an evil person, but that's what happened in the moment for it. And that's how I feel like he felt. That's exactly the way that they were making me feel when I read that was it felt really shamed and small and young. Yeah. So in our partnerships, I do not have a perfect marriage. So I want to say that first of all, when I'm saying these things, it's work. I'm not saying like I got it right all the time. But what I'm learning through my own healing is when you have that conversation with him, it's, hey, when you say that, this nonviolent communication, it makes me feel this. It triggers me all the way back to this thing when I was a kid. And I know you don't mean it that way, but would you mind not doing that for me? Because I know you love me and you don't want to hurt me. Instead of like, don't call me that. That's what are you, a child? You're dirty. It's a dirty thing to do. You know that, but when we're triggered and we're in the moment, we all respond differently, but it doesn't mean you can't go back and have that conversation and say, you know what, I handled that wrong. And I'm sorry. I do that with my kids all the time because I'm having to reparent myself and because I did not get great parenting and because my parents didn't great parenting. And I mean, if you're Gen X, you know, I wouldn't even do it the minute after you calm down. I would do it, like just say like, I owe you an apology when you're ready to hear me out. I'd like to talk about it because he may not be ready for that. And that's okay too, right? It's okay for somebody to not be in the space to hear it right away. Um, I don't feel like he's an evil person. I feel like he's just like emotionally not there. You can't make somebody take accountability. And you're going to just give yourself a headache. I'm like, I don't even feel like I'm doing a psychic reading right now. I feel like we're just friends talking, me chatting with you. But we all know that we can't make somebody take accountability. We want it all we want. You can manifest it. You can manifest it. And what does accountability look like to you? Think about that. Like, what is him taking accountability? Like, imagine what that would be like. Having that conversation with him. This is how manifestation works. This is the secret to it. Right. So you don't even want accountability. You want validation. You want him to validate your feelings and honor them. And to not minimize your feelings. It's not about saying, I am this terrible person. It's like, hey, after we talked, I guess I can see why that would upset you. But maybe that's what he needs to hear. You're saying, like, you're not holding accountability. So he's hearing accountability. But what I'm hearing is validation. Please don't minimize me. These are my feelings. They're valid. And I think what was huge for my husband was like, I said to him, feelings don't make sense. They don't have to make sense. And I say that to my kids. They don't have to make sense. You don't have to figure them out. But they're valid and they're real. And I think just saying that to him, saying like, you're not responsible for my feelings, but there are things that do trigger me and our boundaries. And I'm asking you to respect that. And it's a conversation to like, it might be something that you have to revisit. I follow a lot of therapists. I have a lot of therapists for clients. But I saw something the other day and I was like, oh, that like, somebody said something like, and I wish I could remember the therapist that said it. And she was sharing about one of her friends that said it, her therapist friends, was about like 90% of what you fight about now is going to be the thing that you always fight about. I'm sure he gets resentful, but that's his to deal with. So trying to control all of that, you can't do that. What you can do is work on you and how you approach it and how you communicate, and also how we visualize it and manifest it in our head. And that's really hard when you're with a longtime partner, to visualize change and see that there's a possibility for change. But I can tell you, like with my mom, we've had a lot of really good communication because I approach it differently. Like, hey, I know you didn't mean it this way, but this is how I felt. I'm sure. What if you just said that that's your goal? And okay, I want to stop doing it as like this is like opening you up just to talk, because I feel like this is not therapy. But I'm going to look at and see where I see it going. I feel like you really should give it a few days. Like that is absolutely, like with him, I feel like it cannot be in the moment. It literally has to be like, hey, I want to talk about this when this happened. And this is why, that it's not that I think you're a terrible person, but this is what's going on with me when I get really upset. This is why I get really upset. And I don't think that you're a terrible person, but you can just ask, like, do you understand why it would upset me? Or, that's all I'm really looking for. You just say, like, I'm not looking for you to be grovelly, apologetic, blah, blah, blah. But, I'm just wondering if like you can understand why that would be upsetting for me, where my feelings are at on that. And then how he handles it is just information. My therapist used to tell me that, like, when you're doing nonviolent communication, she's like, you just get, it's information. So if you ask for an apology and they won't give you an apology, that's information. It happened to me once. And she's like, and it took me a couple of years to process that. Like, if someone says they love you and they're unwilling to apologize, then the conclusion I finally came to is like, that's kind of a dick move. Like, listen, he goes slower to come around than you want him to be. It's interesting because I feel like a lot of threes around him. So it'll take him 3 days to calm down and like really be able to process things. I feel like in 3 months, you're going to see a shift in your relationship and your communication for the positive, not for the negative. And in 3 years, your relationship's going to look totally different for the positive, not the negative. So I totally appreciate what you're saying, Allie. You should stay true to your feelings, but you don't have to. It's not about putting them aside the way I'm saying this. It's about communicating it in a healthy and effective way so that it doesn't automatically put the person on the defense and feeling like they're a terrible, horrible person because you don't open communication if the other person feels attacked and horrible. Like, think about when you feel attacked and horrible, you kind of start to shut down and go in, right? Or you attack back. In a relationship, the goal is, if you want to stay together, is to have open and honest communication. It doesn't mean it always feels good. It doesn't mean that it's easy. But if you say, like, if you look at really why you feel a certain way, where it comes from, and why it's like super offensive, if you're in a respectful, healthy, loving relationship, then they should want to respect those boundaries, right? And maybe even address that too with him. Hey, I'm concerned because we have a second baby coming. And it's scary for me to think that I know that you love me, but we have to figure out how to communicate. And maybe to you it doesn't seem like a big deal, but here's why it's a big deal for me. Here's why it triggers me. With my my best friend and I were talking, because she was just talking about like frustration with parenting. And I said, we all parent from different places, and we parent from the place that with the things that we didn't get or that are important to us. So like, her husband wishes he would have done better in school because he's a really smart guy and he totally could have gotten better grades. So he's very hard on his son about grades. And she's sort of like, whatever. She's kind of like, and she's not like C's get degrees, but she's like, just try your best kind of thing. I'm like, C's get degrees. Sorry. I encourage my children to do their best, but I don't put any stress about grades. But she can be kind of helicoptery because she didn't have, her parents were not really there and supportive. So remember that, like, a lot of the stuff that we deal with just in life in general, whether it's a romantic partner or a friendship or a professional partnership, we have to look at why we get triggered. And like, you will be more successful in all of your relationships, But I just feel like it's like, you have to wait. Like, if you have a blow up, you have to wait a little bit of time to give him before he's going to really hear you. But I feel like it's going to get better when you approach him in a more effective manner. And then also, you know this, don't call names and stuff like that. Because it just gives you more stuff you have to apologize for. We're all learning. We are all a work in progress. You will always be learning. You will always be a student. And that's what I love about, like, where I finally got to this place where it's like, I don't want to put anybody on a pedestal and be like, oh my God, like, I've learned a lot. I have a lot of mentors. One specifically, I just adore him. But he's not on a pedestal. He's a human being. He's had his, shortcomings and everything else, just like everybody else. Even the people who, like, I really liked Doreen Virtue for a long time because she was a great like segue into me finding my own spiritual practices and like what works for me. Cherry pick the hell out of everything, really. And she's like gone off into la la land of evangelical Christianity and stuff, and I'm not down with that, but it doesn't mean I didn't learn from her. So, rambling today. So I feel like it's going to be okay, Cindy, and I feel like he's going to get it, but it's not as fast as you want it to be. But remember, like you too have things to work on. Yes. And also remember that and there's a million books on this, we recreate our relationships, right? So if you grew up without safety and security and feeling seen, validated, and heard, you automatically gravitate towards partners that make you feel not seen, validated, and heard, not because it's sort of along your belief systems of what your value and worth are, but it's also because it's like that subconscious thing that we have where we just follow the path that we know because it's comfortable. Oh, well, good. I'm glad you find it educational. I feel like it's info dumping. See, that's like the whole, I like to info dump. I think I honestly like my special interest, and this is probably why I never got flagged as, whatever, is like I freaking love science. I would make my mom was like, you made us watch eyeball surgeries and back surgeries. I'm like, but they were so cool. I just think the human body is so incredible, what it's capable of, and all the like intricate workings. And people and spirituality and just people's stories. I love people's stories, hearing their real, like when my first job ever was in a nursing home and I worked in the kitchen, and I would just talk to all the old people. I'd ask about their tattoos and like why they got them, what they meant, and what their life was like then, and how they met their partners, and just like what their life was like. I just always I thrived on listening to all those stories. I depending on the job we got in the kitchen, so you would get assigned a certain dining room, and sometimes those dining rooms were up in the Alzheimer's unit, and sometimes you were in the main dining room. Or maybe you did serve I can't remember. I think we did both. So we'd go up and I'd serve the people who were in the assisted living or like the full living, and then come down and do the dining room. Then I would go up and have to like bust all of those and clean all those tables and clean the dining rooms. And then I would either get to mop the floors in the kitchen or do the dishes. And I could learn by looking at, and this is like, I think this is my pattern recognition. And part of that is like, I could look at plates after they were collected, like just in the thing, even if they didn't have a name on it, or when they would come through the dishes, and I would know whose plate, who wasn't eating well. And there'd be no names on anything, but I'd know whose plate belonged to who, and if they weren't eating well. And this was a pretty big facility. So I would know who was doing well and who wasn't doing well. And there was one little old, like Alzheimer's lady who would like wander, and I would bring her in with me. And she had a moment of clarity, and I thought it was really sweet. But the like nurses were like, when are you gonna be a nurse? I was like, never. Like, when are you gonna come work here? I was like, never. I don't know. That's my special interest. People, spiritual stuff, helping people. Okay. Yeah. Oh, and doing like those dishes, like my shoes always had this, like I wore Vans, and they had this really strong, hot, black rubber mat smell to them. They were so disgusting, and they ordered the wrong shirt for me. So it had like, I looked like I was wearing a Wendy's shirt, like that Wendy, or the character for the hamburger place with the like puffy sleeves and the stripes, which was not cool when you were 15, 16 years old. Okay, Miss Devery. Miss Cindy, I hope that's helpful. I adore you. Hello again. I wanted to know if the renewed assistance you've seen some months ago still continue at the end of this current one now in August. Yes. Yes, like immediately, yes. Um, I don't know if it's like in October or November, if there's like a shift in either the amount or the way they do it, but there's some kind of change to it, but it doesn't feel like it's totally off. It's just a change. You're very welcome, Cindy. My heart literally goes out to you because it's so hard when you like here, but this doesn't always follow, and then like we just don't, and then we just all the frustration that comes along with that. Also, if you've been here a really long time, I just want to say, remember when I made the comment? I like years, a couple years ago now, years. I've been on here for years. Where I made the comment about like I had that vision about Donald Trump being arrested and like the marbly type walls behind him. I felt like it was like a a federally building or whatever, and it had like the reddish brownish marbly behind him, and felt like it was either CIA or um, um, Secret Service with and he had his hands cuffed behind him. Just saying, remember that? I didn't label anything on any of these videos. It was in May and I forgot to renew, so was worried. No, I feel like you'll get it. So it may be that like maybe it's like there's a little bit of a delay in it getting to you or something like that, but I feel like you'll get it. It was probably 4 years ago, Cindy. Yeah. Like I don't remember. I never labeled the videos, and it was probably in some random discussion somebody asked me about it. I'm like, I don't know. I just keep seeing him get arrested. I don't know when. I don't know how that's related. I was like, maybe it's related to the New York stuff. I don't know. But all I could say is that this is what I saw. So I'll be really interested because that motherfucker. And if anybody happens to be here and is a Trumper, probably not, but still. You started working out. Yay! It's hard to remain consistent, but here's the thing. This is what I figure with my stuff when I'm trying to like do anything. It's like I don't have to be the same that I did the yesterday or work as hard as I did the, whatever. It's like for me, it's really about just showing up consistently and doing the work, and that eventually it will manifest in the way I want. Also, when you look at it, I heard this and I thought this was a really powerful language thing. Don't say you're losing weight because you always want to find what you lose. Say you're releasing it. You're letting it go. And then I can always imagine, like, if you're doing it as manifesting, you always say, like, if you like, how I like to personify everything because that's just me. So imagine talking to all your little fat cells and be like, thank you so much for your work. I appreciate you. Now you can go help a little skinny NICU baby or a little, somebody who's got cancer and needs the weight, whatever, just to wherever the universe needs it, because I don't need you anymore and I appreciate you. Yes. I think that's the biggest thing is like we worry so much about what people think about how we look and everything else. And it's like, but who the fuck are they anyway? Right? Who is anybody else to judge you or like be like, look at you. Some of the prettiest people I've known physically are some of the nastiest, ugliest people on the inside. So and a huge part of that is shifting the way we think about ourselves and doing all of those affirmations when you're like, that's a big part of that. And you should be proud of yourself for doing that work. It's not easy to reprogram the way you think about yourself. It's not easy to just go out there and say, like, hey, I'm going to do this regardless of what somebody else, like, you are reprogramming thousands and thousands and thousands of thoughts and seconds and moments of thinking those thoughts that you aren't worthy or valuable. And I'm really proud of you, but most importantly, you should be really proud of you because it's not easy work. And it requires consistency and it requires showing up. It's a practice. It is not, you're not just done. I'm making sure, like I tell my oldest daughter, who's, you know, none of my kids are like crazy athletic. My middle daughter will like practice and practice and practice and practice things until she can get it right. My oldest for a long time would just like give up. And I was really excited because she started riding a scooter and practicing riding her scooter and trying to get better at it. And she didn't just give up. And I said, I'm really proud of you because you don't get good at something by being good at it right away. Like you have to be willing to suck at it. And that's okay to suck at something. You don't get better unless you're okay with sucking at it at first. So I'm proud of you, Devry. Linda, you're up. And then I'll check PayPal. Sorry, I think I'm losing everybody. I'm not a robot. Let's see, who do I have on here? Linda, Mallory, and Shar. Shar's got 2. Okay, I will, Linda. It's nice seeing you. It's been a while. This probably isn't what you want to hear, but it's like this. He feels very detached to me. And it feels like an intentional, like, not because he doesn't like you, but more so because he's having a hard time being hopeful. And they're telling me he's like stuck in a rut. So just like mentally and physically stuck in this rut of like just basically in robot mode. Kind of like Groundhog Day. Yeah. So it feels like it's an intentional choice to detach and like be like, well, it's like compartmentalizing he's not really great with emotions. Did you guys see that thing that like there's some article that came out that said like men on dating apps are feeling like, basically women are having more demands now and it's requiring emotional availability. And the men are like, I have to be emotionally available. There's a lot of men who aren't emotionally available. He feels unmotivated, honestly. Like energetically, he feels like he's unmotivated just in life in general. Like he's not a person who would just be like, I'm going to go do this. Like he feels like very like a defeated energy almost. So I don't know that he can really wrap his head around how he feels about you because he just is like, it's like this Eeyore energy. Oh, it's me. This is my life. I'll accept it as it is. What's the best approach? I don't ever want to tell you that, like, so you have one guide who is very like, and I feel like you know this guide. You have one guide who is very like, it's a female guide, and she's like, no bullshit. Like, she literally said, cut your losses and move on. But her energy is like very like Kali or Hecate, like just like stop holding yourself back and move on. And then you have like these other ones who are just more like, well, like we see why it's taking a hard time. They're a little bit softer, but they're like this very, do you have Aries? Like it's just very fiery, um, direct, noble. Yeah. So it doesn't feel like it's like, well, but they also know you're stubborn and there's this side of you that's like, well, I just want to see. Look, a lot of this is like in your own way not being emotionally available, right? So it's like, well, there's nothing else that's catching your eye and you don't know that you're really, this is the feeling they're giving me. You can tell me if I'm right or wrong, jump ship, whatever. But like you don't really know if you're wanting to put yourself out there and be fully vulnerable. So this is a safety pick. You have an Aries moon emotionally. I am Aries rising. I think it is like the only thing that keeps me from melting apart and letting everybody walk all over me and being super codependent. Hi, Lenara. Yeah. Oh, so they're saying like oh. Man, they're spicy. Okay. Can I be super direct? Is it okay? They're kind of like, hey, I'm like asking you permission, but I'm not really waiting for it. They're like, that relationship wasn't perfect anyway. And it was like kind of, they lit the fire underneath you to get you out of it. Oh, because you hate change. You also don't like to hurt people. Yeah. So it's like, that relationship wasn't meant for you. It's like, you can say that that was the reason. I mean, it was the catalyst, but like, fuck, man. I wish they would shut up, but they're not. So I'm going to go. Like, it's not that he's like all that, but like, he was like, oh, let's like get out of this one to that one. It was really just like, we're showing you an opportunity to get out of this. Like, we're helping you move forward because this isn't what's best for you. I just realized I look like I'm wearing coffee stain. Sorry, shades of stain. I had a tank top on and I was like, well, Okay. Um, there's something with paperwork being caught up. Like I literally feel like it's like a paper jam is what they're showing me it like when when you go on the printer and it's like jammed in there and you have to like it's like there's something with that when I'm asking like what's stopping all of it. But I also feel like he's not really doing much to light the fire and move it forward. I do feel like you're going to meet him. And I think I've always said that you're going to meet him. But the feeling I get is more like, how like when some people talk about like meeting the celebrity of their like they're like, oh, I always admire them, and they meet them in person, they're like, oh, I wish I wouldn't have. Or another example is my friends and I, this is before I met my husband. I was, we were in Mexico. Two of my girlfriends and I were in Mexico, and there was like a hot dad. But then he talked. Like he was really nice to look at. And then he talked and he had this weird, like almost like he had sucked in helium type voice. Like it just didn't fit him at all. And I was like, oh, you just ruined it. So it's like the idea of him, I feel like you're going to be let down a little bit. Um, I feel like he has like, so this is weird that I say this here, like he's resisting meeting in a visa free location. And part of me feels like he's got like weird anxieties about stuff. So like, and I don't know, like just like there's like not weird. I don't want to say weird because like anxieties don't always make sense, but like it doesn't make sense what his rationale is behind stuff. Okay, I'm gonna move forward. Mallory, you're up. I'm just writing the new list. Oh, thank you, Devery. Please like and subscribe. Check out my TikToks too. I'm trying to be more consistent over there and active over there. I just I get stuck in my head and I don't know why. And I don't know. Sometimes I have a hard time moving forward and being like, okay, just record this. And like I'm having a lot of like my guides are using this as a timer where they're like, you should talk about this. And then I'm like, okay, yeah, I should talk about like the whole new earth thing, why I don't believe in it, why I think it's a bunch of hogwash and why I steer clear of it. Not that it's not possible, but just why I really steer clear of it. Cause I think it's like, it just reminds me of weird stuff. And then of course, like I've been getting that and getting that and getting that for weeks. And then of course now who's talking about it, but this like bigger person, I see her TikTok today and I'm like, motherfucker, I should have talked about it. Anyway, they're kicking in the ass a lot. So I'm trying to get better about just recording stuff. What's coming in for you this week, Mallory? Do you have like and I say this because I know I'm not going to get the answer right away. So I just sort of like the feeling I'm getting is like someone that you maybe dated briefly in the past or had a little crush on or connection on coming back this week. Because I have this feeling of somebody returning and saying, like, I missed you and having like a little connection. Maybe it's an old friend or like a crush from way back at when or something. It might not be this week specifically, but it just feels like there's somebody coming back in for you, which by the way, I hate all those tarot readings that are like, love is coming back for you. Next is returning to you. Love is coming in. I'm like, motherfuckers. Tell people that all the time. Those general readings, like sort of, I appreciate them. And I also don't. Anyway. Like I appreciate them for what they are and understand what they are, but I always think it's funny. It's like, you think everybody wants somebody to come back? I don't. But this feels like somebody like from the past having known somebody in like a return. Um, And this is weird and I don't know what it is, but I like got this feeling like, you like to ask for your signs from Tony, and I saw a ball of yarn. Ball of yarn. Which is like um I don't know that it's an actual ball of yarn or if this is going to be like a graphic that you see that makes sense. So I don't know if you're going to a baby shower or a knitting party, a crochet your heart out day. The yarn is unusual, I know. So I don't understand it, but it's like this, it feels like it'll make sense. Did you have a setback with your foot? Is it this feeling of like having a setback? So just watch your foot. It feels like having like a like if you haven't walked a lot and then like you go on like say you were to, I don't know if you've ever been into the city, New York City to visit, like where you don't walk as much, but then like you go to New York City and like literally the best way to see the city is walking everywhere. Um and your feet just like it feels like overexertion, that kind of feeling of that. So that might be something that comes up of like having feeling overexerted, but not on both feet, just like one feeling like maybe you did too much. That might be something that pops up then if you don't have it right now. And I'm asking him, like, what else does she need to know? And he literally smacked you on the ass. So, y'all, they do not lose their flirtation on the other side. I have had spirits come through where I read for this woman who worked with NHL hockey players, and one of the guys that she was friends with had passed away, and I was like, well, he was an ass man. And she's like, oh my God, he totally was. I'm like, yes, still is. So there you go. A little spicy for you. Shar, you're up. Then I've got Deborah and Stephanie, I got your payment. Thank you, everybody. This is weird, and I know it's weird, but I keep getting that sense of like how if I go into like an indoor pool area and they use chlorine in the water, I get really almost it's not quite reactive airway, but it's just I have like even when I go swimming in chlorine now, even when it's not like my skin feels itchy, I just have like a reaction to it. Um, are you doing swimming or something this semester? I also feel like kind of anxiety surrounding it. So I don't know why they would tell me that or why they're showing me that. So I don't know if it's maybe you did start to go swimming for exercise or whatever. It just feels like, do you have anxiety? I just like, I can't, I know it's weird. And that's why I'm saying it. It's just like, that was the first feeling I get. So I'm not looking at that for your response yet. So I asked, like, what do you need to know about this semester? What would be like, I feel like you'll do fine, but I also feel like you do have anxiety and your mind runs away with you and you get a lot of intrusive thoughts. Um, and you have to learn to control that and sort of like push through those. I do feel like this semester you need to be much more organized and more disciplined than you have in the past because I feel like it's a heavier workload than in the past. So there's like a lot of tedious work. So my example for this is like I always had to study through nursing school, but then once you got into a certain part of your clinicals, you had to start doing care plans, and care plans suck. And it was like sort of like they're long and they're tedious, and you sort of have to plan for all of that, like little tedious stuff. Um, so it just feels like it's really important for you to like, do you have ADHD? Because it's that feeling of like the intrusive thoughts and then the like maybe procrastinating a little bit more because deadlines are really, really helpful to get stuff done. It just feels like you really need to intentionally this year um, set a schedule for yourself, like all of those, really work on your executive function stuff so you're more on top of stuff because it just feels like it's a lot of work this semester. So it's not that it's hard, it's just time consuming. So it's like really consciously being like, when I said I get stuck in my head, deadlines are fantastic for me. I work really, really well with deadlines. And I work really, really hard and hyper focus and like get a lot done. But like I have to really push myself sometimes to get there. So I feel like you'll do fine, but they're just saying like these are the things that really, really benefit you this semester specifically because it feels like it is a lot more work than in the past. So you are smart enough. You're perfectly capable of doing it. It is not that the work is too hard. I'm not a big proponent, and I've never been, even when I was in college and even high school and stuff, when people are like, it's so hard. I'm like, it's not hard. It's just a lot of work. And maybe that comes from, I mean, I do have a higher IQ. So like learning isn't necessarily hard. It's just like, do I have to study more, memorize more, or like put more work in or not? But I've never thought like this is impossible. And it feels like it's not impossible, but it is like consciously saying like, okay, like I have to do with laundry. Like, okay, I have to do 2 loads of laundry a day or I'm going to get swamped because there's, you know, my husband does his own laundry, but like there's all the sheets and all the towels and all the like, and then 4 other people's stuff who like, with kids, you can't wear something twice because it's like covered like everything. So I think it's really beautiful. I agree with you, Stephanie, to say that like you always tune in. I was doing a reading last week with a client, and I was like, I go, it's funny, I'm telling you this, but I know I need to hear it too. And I find it really fascinating that there's oftentimes when I do readings, and I'm like, oh, this is something I needed to hear too. So, um, if it will be time consuming, do you see that I will be able to get to do the things with music club plus my job? Right. Um, I do feel like you'll be able to. It doesn't feel like as much much as you want it, like would like the music end of it, but I do feel like you'll be able to fit it in there. It's enough to satisfy your need for that. It's not as much as like you're like, oh, if I could just, but it is enough. And I actually feel like because you're gonna have, if you have all of that lined up, you actually do better than when you have less. So like when you feel that pressure of like I have all of this stuff I have to do, you actually end up doing better. You thrive in that. And some people would say that's not healthy, but I think it's just the way the dopamine works for your brain. And then also change the thought process. You'll never abandon yourself. Like those are belief systems. And remember, like our belief systems are like the little screenwriter in our head, and the universe is the production, casting director, everything else. And we are avatars are the main characters. So however the main character, the screenwriter goes, the main character sees themselves as being abandoned by their thing. So then the universe goes, let's give you the opportunity to be abandoned. If you're just like, I will never abandon myself. I always honor myself and show up for myself. Then that's what happens. So I am a proponent of because I get those intrusive thoughts too, of like treating those intrusive thoughts with respect and love, and like, yeah, in the past it was really hard, but we always get through this. Like I personify everything because it calms it for me. That's just me. Um, I never recommend meditations. It's not because I don't think meditating is great. I just think it's very personal. um, and people's voices, like, because I think I have like a lot of sensory stuff, certain people's voices just like drive me absolutely batshit crazy. So I don't want to listen to them. And then like the cadence, the way they say things is like very important. So I don't, because it's like, it is such an issue. This is, I keep telling you guys, I swear I am. Right. So Stephanie, if you want to go ahead and, mention those, that's fantastic. Share away. That's why I don't recommend it. But I also am like one of these things where people are like, you really need to meditate in order to like connect in and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, you don't, because I didn't meditate as a kid. You can also try doing the Wim Hof breathing technique, and do the beginner's one, not the regular one, because you will basically what it physiologically does is it sends you into um, a hyperventilated state. And then you go into a state where you breath hold, and it does calm your nervous system, but you breath hold and you'll be like, oh my God, I didn't know I could hold my breath this long. But your body physiologically is able to do that because you're holding in, like, because you blow off a whole lot of CO2 in the beginning of it. And then you can breath hold to like, make sure you're holding in the CO2. It's actually kind of, if you know what's going on, it's really cool. But yeah, no, I'm not, there's no judgment. I get why people do it, but I was just saying, like, well, I think when there's all these like rules that people say, like, you have to do this, I'm always like, you can try and do what works for you, but you don't have to do anything in order to like, So Wim Hof is a breathing technique. I think it's fascinating. There's a lot of people who swear by it. I just think it's interesting to try it, but you might feel like a little tingly, a little dizzy. Don't panic, push yourself through it. Your body will go in. Like, even for me, I was like, well, this isn't like, cause I didn't know that that's what it was supposed to do. So I was like, this isn't right. And all my like little bells went off in my head, but then I was fine. I pushed through it. It was fine. Okay. Deborah, you have another question, and then Stephanie. So yeah, if you have any recommendations, please go ahead and recommend. That's fine. I've been applying to state jobs in different states, even if I'm unqualified, and it just feels right. Yeah, I don't feel like, so I'm gonna say is like, I don't feel like that's not the, I don't feel like that's the wrong thing to do. It actually feels really good. And it's like, um, the way they're showing me this is like, even if something doesn't pop up right away with it, it's really good to stick with that because it's shifting and it's more in alignment with your new belief systems and your self concept that you're working on. And I wouldn't, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if you get something that you're not technically qualified for because it feels like you're enthusiastic about it and you're hopeful about it and you're positive. There's all those like good things that energetically go with it when you send it out there. So it doesn't feel like right away, but it does feel like, and if it's a different state, I still feel like it's on this, like the edge of the state line. So it's like, I don't know. I don't know that you're necessarily going to be in a different state, but I do feel like you'll be working from home. When is your lease up? Do you mind giving me the month? That's funny. It was like I was seeing 3 and then I saw that. So I was like, "Oh, okay. I don't know if that means 3 months." So yeah, I do. Definitely. It feels actually within like 3 months. It doesn't feel that far off. I really feel like maybe you don't feel like other people see it, but you know how there's that trend where it's like that teenage dirtbag trend? And I keep hearing that song right now, and it's just that feeling of like you really have glowed up, grown up, matured, become so much wiser. And there's going to be people that are in your life that still hold you to that vision of that person, but you're no longer that person. So you need to not worry about if somebody's holding you to that vision still. Um, I even do it sometimes too, where I see people I haven't seen in forever, and I'm like, oh my god. Because in my head, there's still that person I knew in high school or college. So don't worry so much about whether or not, however they hold you to. It's also that idea like where we're like, oh, I don't know. Don't try not to. Yeah. Because people are gonna, everybody sees us differently. We're not really one person. Everybody sees us completely differently and has a different experience with us. There's so many versions of us that exist. Also, try not to get caught up in timelines, all of that timeline bullshit. Like, I believe in different timelines, and I think I've experienced timeline shifts. But at the same time, if there's infinite possibilities of timelines you can be in, you're shifting all the time. So to get it caught up and be like, I'm definitely in a different timeline. Well, you're like in a different timeline all the time. So don't get caught up in that stuff either. Okay, Jeffrey. All right, I'm gonna leave you with that. Stephanie, what's your question? And then I think we are done. What do you need to know? I want to say in what sense, because I want to narrow it down because it could be just be like, if I'm going to tell you what it feels like, but if you need to narrow it down, let me know. Um, we'll do it that way. I feel like you're in the wrong major or something. That's literally heard. It's like I feel like I'm in the wrong major. Okay. Like I don't feel like I'm in alignment with what I love. I feel like maybe I pigeonholed myself into something thinking I would like it and I don't like it. And then it's this like, am I letting someone down? Am I letting myself down? Like it's like worried about like, would people think if I change? Um, okay. So I'm going to say this to you. Do not let yourself not change because you're worried that somebody else is going to go, you're never going to get your shit together. You're never going to like, you're always changing. You haven't figured it out. Like, do not stay here because you're worried about what other people are going to think about you changing again or making another shift. I spent a lot of my life doing that. And I think a lot of people do that. So this is not like, I think, there's a universal sense to this. It just feels like they're saying, like, when you're 80 or 90, you're not going to look back and think, like, oh, I'm so glad I stayed in that because everybody else thought I was such a mess. You're going to be like, why would I do that to myself? I think my own personal philosophy is it's so strange to me that we're supposed to know at 18 years old what we want to do for the rest of our lives. I literally feel like I'm in like stuck in brown thick paint. Like I feel like I'm stuck in brown thick paint. I have to pull my shorts down so I'm not sorry. Just like, I'm such a wiggly person. It's really hard for me to sit still. Just call me shifty. Are you in some kind of like archaic study? I literally feel like I'm stuck in brown paint in a brown castle, like with brown walls and brown stone around me. And I'm like, it's like I'm not where I belong. I feel like I'm supposed to be in a world full of color and I'm stuck in this world full of ugh. Like they forgot to give me the right palette to paint with. It's nursing. It's not that I don't feel like you're supposed to help people, but I almost feel like you're in the wrong major. Like maybe you should be in art therapy or music therapy or occupational therapy. Like it feels like you're not in the right area. I was a nurse, so I mean, I understand that there's a lot of areas of nursing you can work with, and it doesn't. I mean, I was, I think, very naive to the opportunities that were possible for me. I had no idea I didn't know about occupational nursing or speech therapy or any of that stuff. I was like, you're a nurse or you're a doctor. Like I don't know. I was very naive. But it just feels like I honestly feel like you're in the wrong major. Or maybe you're supposed to be in pediatrics and like you're supposed to be around a lot of color and I don't know, but it just feels like whatever you're doing, it doesn't feel right. So I don't know if you're at a point where you're in clinicals and like maybe you're just in like the med surge clinicals and like all the adult stuff and it just sucks. Med surge sucks, by the way. And don't let anybody tell you you have to go into med surge nursing when you graduate. They told me that shit too. Like, oh, you should do at least 18 months of med surg. I was like, nah, fuck that noise. I'm gonna go. I ended up doing postpartum, antepartum GYN surgical. It was like really such a perfect foray into what I was doing. I learned how to breastfeed. Like I was the nurse who learned from all of the like lactation consultants and stuff. Like I was always, and then when I was in the NICU, I learned from all the OTs and like teach me how to feed, teach me what I'm looking for because I am at the bedside most of the time. I want to know. You're still doing the theoretical part. I also think, I gotta tell you, I think like the medical, like the whole way the medical system is like, oh, everybody has to have a bachelor's and oh, you got to do all these other things. I'm like, it's why they don't have enough nurses. They should go back to saying like an associate's degree is fine because no offense, you learn a shit ton on the job. You don't learn it in school. And not everybody wants to go and be like, you don't need a bachelor's for it. You really don't. They need to go back to the way they used to do things. They need to go back to using trade school. They need to stop putting so many barriers because I know a lot. I mean, I only had an associate's degree. I did not want to do, I had zero desire to do anything other than bedside nursing. I didn't, like, I didn't care if I was in charge of anybody. I didn't care about management. I didn't want to join any fucking committees. I don't really care. I want to go to work, do my job, do the best fucking job that I can do, take care of those people, and then I want to go home. Like, I don't. They are all the business people are fucking up medicine. I said it here, and I will die on that hill. No, you can ask a question, Autumn. So it just feels like maybe take an extra class where you get to do some artwork or do something more creative and see where that leads you. Find a little something outside and see, because I'm not sure that you're really where you're supposed to be. And I'm sorry to say that. It just doesn't feel like you're, and I don't want to be like, oh, you should just be like, follow your dreams. And like, I get that you need stability and all of that other stuff, but there's some aspect to what you need to do that needs to be a little bit more creative or with color or something. And it's okay to honor that. And that's it. It's $12. In the description, there should be a link to my PayPal if you. Nothing died. Nothing died. So I think we get into these ideas that we're broken. You're not broken. Trauma sucks. It's bullshit. And you may always have triggers from it. And that's okay. That was another conversation that came up with a client where we were talking about, she was just like, I don't know if I'm ever going to not be triggered. And I was like, I got to be honest. I have a lot of childhood trauma and I notice my triggers quicker. I understand where they're coming from quicker and I honor them. And so it's like, they're like less up and down, but I will probably always have triggers. I will probably always have certain things. And the more empathetic and kind you can be with yourself about that, the easier the journey. There's so many things that I get like nuggets, like in readings where it's like, where I've heard it a million times when I've gone through readings, like, and I sit and get a reading from somebody and I have given it to other people where it's like, it really is about the journey. It's not about the destination. And that's kind of how manifesting is. Like when you're manifesting something, like, great, you get it. And it's awesome that you have it, but that doesn't mean you've stopped manifesting and you stop like trying to grow and get more and do more. That's the same thing with your like growth and your healing process and all of that. Like you don't have to, you're not broken because you don't have that. Nothing died. Things fall away. things get quieted and dampened, but you can find it again. Yeah. And you honor them and you set more boundaries and I got it, Autumn. Um, just be gentle with yourself. Try to be gentle with yourself. I think also once I came to the understanding, like I may just have these and that's okay. Um, it gets better. You can drop your question on them. Stephanie, do you feel satisfied? I just think that that's sort of what they're showing me is like find your way to the colors because it doesn't feel I don't feel like you're depressed. I don't feel it just feels like I'm not in the right space. I'm supposed to be. And don't feel bad about that. So when people are like, "Oh, I'm not," I had a friend who was like in college forever and she was like, "Well, you're already a nurse and you're doing these things." I was like, "So what? That's my journey. That's not your journey." Like don't feel bad about where you're at. Like there's all the time in the world. That's not your journey. Um, you didn't have to say his full name. It's fine. So I do feel like you will, but it feels like this, like it's like a really thin connection, a precarious connection. It's not this really strong connection. And I so just this is like not the psychic part, but just you asking means a doubt within your ability to do this. So that like then presents an issue when you're manifesting. So this is what I'm asking, like what's really blocking that and like what's creating that. I don't know if he's in the military, but there's this like very people in the military are very like their life is very scheduled and regimented. So maybe he's a very regimented personality. Does that make sense when I say that? Like he's not he would be much more analytical thinker versus being a creative artsy type guy. You're very welcome, Stephanie. Thank you for trusting me. Right. So I don't think he's necessarily in the military, but it's having a very regimented, a very analytical brain, a very like not this like creative arty guy. Like I would put him in the range of being like a numbers guy, a percentages guy, statistics. Like he just feels very like he thinks very in a very regimented manner. So I just feel like he's not like I feel like you're going to date him, but I also feel like you're not going to get what you need from it, but you're going to get what you need from it. So it's like you're not going to you desire like an emotional deeper connection and I feel like it's going to be it feels like a struggle for me. So that's why I feel like that fine connection. It's almost like if you think about the way like cotton candy is and you pull it and it's got that like it's very easy to pull apart. It's that feeling to me and it's not because you aren't good enough to be loved or deserving or worthy or any of that or like oh if I just try harder it's not that it's like it feels like you get from it that lesson that you need about seeing your own value, worth, etc. He's a lot older than me, and I'm like, do I really want to manifest this? And that could be what I'm picking up on, but they're just showing me like it's not a great, but you learn from it. So it's like I do feel like there'll be a connection. It just doesn't feel like it'll be a strong connection. So let's look at what I think you'll learn from it, the lesson, like the what you get from it, because we learn from every situation. So it feels like you will date him. I don't think it'll be long term, but you learn a lot about yourself through the process of it. Like, so seeing red flags and learning to honor that and trust yourself and love yourself and be like, I really deserve more than this. I think that's sort of what comes from it. And then I don't necessarily feel like after that you manifest a specific person, but you manifest a specific person. So not like an actual, like, I want to be with John Doe, but like I want a man I want to be in a relationship that is with somebody who's emotionally available, emotionally mature, somebody who's financially um, stable and secure, somebody who likes traveling, like that kind of stuff. Somebody who is spiritual but not religious, like where you manifest that person rather than a specific being. Um, the older I get, the more I'm like, yeah, I'm not big on age differences. I think the more I get to know myself and honor myself and all of that stuff, I see why they're problematic. And I know there's plenty of people where there's always been like an age gap or whatever, but I think I'm looking at things differently, and I think the world is shifting differently. And I said this earlier, you weren't here, but where I talked about like there's this article that came out about like men basically being like, we're not getting relationships anymore because women are wanting people who are emotionally available and we aren't ready for that. I mean, there's plenty of relationships that work with that as long as you're, I have to tell you, I think that you'll manifest a few dates with him and then you'll realize that it's not really a good match. That's what I feel like is going to happen for multiple reasons. My husband is older than I am, so it's not like he's like 7.5 years older than I am. There's plenty of people who have an age gap. I think I see things having been married and maturity and 44 and all of that. I just like looking at life differently now. But I feel like what happens is not that it's the age gap is the big issue. I just feel like, we grow and we learn through relationships, and you kind of don't know what you really want in a relationship until you experience those things. I mean, you do and you don't, right? So, I don't want somebody who's abusive and I don't want, but like you refine that through interaction. And if that wasn't the case, then you would just like meet someone and be like, oh, this is what, I don't know, whatever. You would like know right away. But I think we everything we know about our life and what we like and what we don't like is through comparison and experience. That always makes me curious. I don't know why. I don't know. There's a lot I would do differently, I think, but you can't go back and I don't regret it, but I'm at a different state in my life. I'm 44 and so I just see things differently, and it's not like I'm like, oh, I don't know. You'll learn. I don't feel like you'll regret going on a few dates with them. I think it's actually the way they said is like, you won't get what you need from it, but you get what you need from it to learn and to grow and to like whatever. Okay. All right. I'm going to say goodbye. I will see you next week. Um, have a great week. Check out my TikToks. I appreciate all of you for trusting me, and I appreciate you for being here. And I hope you have a wonderful week.